Hello guys and welcome back to the second episode of the All Sorts podcast. We really hope you enjoyed the first podcast. Once again, I am back with my best mate and my podcast co-host Josh Gibson. He is once again off camera, but if he waves, you may be able to see him off the camera. As again, you might be able to tell, we are in a different setting today. Usually we'd be filming at his house, but today we are filming at my house. We thought it would be a different setting. How are you doing, by the way?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, actually, mate. I'm looking forward to this. Second podcast. It's been a while, but I think we've shot up actually, haven't we, in views since the last one? So
yeah,
it should be really good, mate. I'm really looking forward to this, especially this one today, considering the topic.
Yes, we're doing a very good topic, which we will get into in a second. However, before we get into that, our podcast, like Josh said, absolutely blew up. We didn't actually believe that we would get to this amount of views, but my live counter from yesterday, we saw that the podcast has almost hit 90 views. We were one off, but we did hit the 10 like thing, so he needs to do his Palpatine impression.
Yeah, I decided to do it for you lot live.
He's doing it live on camera.
Okay. Yes, good. Let the hate flow through you.
That is quite a good Emperor Palpatine impression. Do it. Anyway,
Yeah.
So obviously, if you want to continue to support the channel, obviously the 90 viewers who did watch the video last time, obviously if you aren't subscribed, please click the subscribe button, as we're now trying to hit the magical 3-digit number of 100 subscribers.
3 digits, come on, people. 3 digits, that's all we need, alright? 3 digits. You might have actually just seen a bit of my face there, so there you go.
No, it's fine. But basically, obviously, I graduate next summer, and he is moving into uni very soon, I believe. So it'll be nice as like a uni warming present for him, and a graduation one for me. So hit that massive 3-digit 100 subscribers. Anyway, so to get on, so this part, again, it will be in 2 parts. Part 1 is going to be on a very highly requested Star Wars topic.
Yes.
And again, I don't know much about it. I apologise, but we are doing Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Yeah. And then the second part will be a more chilled episode, more chilled part, where we do a World Cup or bracket of chocolate bars, which is on a separate note on my phone, as well as answering some deep and thought-provoking questions.
Oh, great.
Therapy. Yeah,
but better.
Tapping into the mind of 2 19-year-old boys. Anyway.
Yeah, basically.
Right, so, kicking things off, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I have done my research, like background research, but I will ask Josh a few questions as well. Obviously, this sort of part of the podcast is going to be more of like me interviewing you about the Clone Wars, and basically me listening, so I sort of get a bit of a background before I watch the series properly.
Yeah, I was about to say, folks, if he doesn't watch the series, you guys are going to blow up the comments, right? You guys are just going to blow up the comments saying, watch Clone Wars constantly. That's all I want to see in the comment section for this video, alright? And if he hasn't done it, alright, he has to do a forfeit, and you guys are going to decide what that is.
Fine, yeah, okay. I mean, he said he's got all the DVDs, so he might have to lend them to me.
I've got the first 5 seasons on DVD. I don't think they made season 7 on DVD. Then season 6 is pretty hard to get a hold of.
Okay. And before we get into the actual, like, the main background thing, obviously, as we said before, there are many, like, tangents you can go down in different Star Warses. However, for this one, if we are talking about, for example, we'll leak a bit, if we're talking about the Mandalore, for example, we can go in and talk about, like, different series, like the Mandalorian, because it might come into it.
Yeah,
you know?
It does link, I think, a few of the topics for the Clone Wars do branch out into other series on, like, Disney Plus.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Anyway, So, as I said, I've done my research. So, the Clone Wars was created by, again, George Lucas. Lucas was inspired, apparently, by real-life political and military events, such as the transition of Roman Republic to Roman Empire, which, to be honest, makes sense, as well as both world wars. What do you think about that?
It makes a lot of sense when you look at some of the parallels that are in the series, because you got the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. Like you said, going from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, and I can sort of see that it is like two factions fighting against each other. Especially, but although I think there's a bit of interpretation, but obviously throughout the entire series, it just goes to show that in war no one wins.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, both sides, at the end of the series, spoiler alert for those of you that haven't watched it, consider this your warning now, both sides don't win. Like, no one wins. And it just goes to show that at the end of, especially the end of the Second World War and the First World War, really, no one won that. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yes, the Allies won, but the amount of loss of life was just catastrophic. So there's definitely a few parallels in the series, especially as well if you look at some of the elements in it, especially like modern day. There's like elements of political terrorism in the Clone Wars. I mean, this is what I mean though. Like, everyone says, "Oh, the Clone Wars is a kids show." It's really not. I wouldn't want my kid watching the Clone Wars.
Yeah, there's a lot more
graphic,
adult
man.
stuff. Yeah,
it's graphic, man. At parts.
Yeah. So we know how it was inspired by the Empire and the Republic and the World Wars. And as well as it said that Clone Wars was set between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Siths. But obviously the Clone Wars is a TV series. So why did Lucas choose to fit a TV series between two main feature films?
Well, the reason being for that is because if you remember Attack of the Clones, Yoda infamously says that line, "Begun the Clone Wars has." And then by the time of Revenge of the Sith, we have no idea what's happened. I mean, Revenge of the Sith is set about 4 years after Attack of the Clones. Everyone's aged like it's sort of like 3-4 years. And we were sort of like left wondering, well, what happened? What happened in the 3 years? There's been a massive war raging for about 3 or 4 years, and we have no idea what's happened. We don't know why. Why does Anakin look so different? Why has Anakin got that scar across his eye now? Like, why has he got long hair?
Yeah, so that's why they decided to make a TV series, basically explaining.
It explains, because there are a few comics done around it as well, but it depends really. That was part of the old continuity, the old Legends continuity. So obviously that's split off from what we now know as canon, which is pretty much the TV series and everything covered by comics released in conjunction with TV series films.
Yeah, and side note, to this day, The Clone Wars is apparently the most watched premiere in Cartoon Network history. The series 1 averaged 4 million viewers on its debut. That is pretty impressive, to be fair.
That is pretty impressive. Like, I don't think there's been another Star Wars series like The Clone Wars.
Not animated, anyway.
Not animated. Well, no, there's definitely never been. Well, Rebels was pretty popular, but not even then. Like, The Clone Wars was just absolutely off the charts.
Yeah, because obviously it was sort of as you said, it was the middle part between wanting to know what it was.
It explains a lot, to say the least.
Yeah.
It explains a lot that happens in the films and later series that you can link back to.
Yeah. So the Clone Wars follows the adventures of 4 particular characters, again from what I've researched: Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Ahsoka Tano. Who is Ahsoka Tano and what is her backstory?
Oh my good grief. You don't know who Ahsoka Tano is.
I know she's a really, really popular character in the...
I'd say she's definitely the most popular because it really centres around her almost. I know we talk about Anakin and Obi-Wan, and to be fair, I don't necessarily agree with Yoda because it does focus... I'd say the first few episodes do. Like, but every sort of Jedi has their own side plot, really. I mean, we get character-focused episodes, like you do get a few Mace Windu episodes, you get a few Plo Koon episodes, which is pretty cool as well. Kit Fisto as well gets his own episode, pretty much alongside his Padawan. But yeah, so basically Ahsoka Tano, the reason being that she's the most popular one is because it just wasn't working. So basically what I mean by that is we sort of there's also a film that goes with the Clone Wars. There is actually a Clone Wars film which sort of serves as a catalyst, and it's almost like the beginning of the series, really.
Oh, okay.
And basically in that film we're introduced to, a few years have passed during the war. I think it's like 1 year around the time of the battle of this planet called Christophsis.
Okay.
But Ahsoka is basically this young Jedi trainee. She's basically just a youngling. She's ready to, become a Padawan, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And some bright spark decided, why do we give Anakin a apprentice? We'll give Anakin an apprentice, see what happens there.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, we sort of get introduced to almost this really annoying kind of child initially. Hasn't got much real world experience till kind of been raised in a Jedi temple her whole life.
Yes. Okay.
And basically, she's introduced as the sort of, I don't want to say the next Anakin, but a sort of Anakin's trainee, learning from the Chosen One.
Yeah.
As part of his own development, really, as well as hers.
Okay.
And so basically, she is a Jedi trainee, and it's throughout the series we sort of see her grow up really and become almost, a very effective leader. And actually, the last episode of the Clone Wars does actually end with her. She's the main character.
Okay.
And that's like a lot of people interpret her as the main character of the series because she goes through the most character development.
Okay.
And George Lucas, actually, funnily enough, it was Dave Filoni as well. Dave Filoni helped create the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the initial idea, because when we were presented with this sort of cocky brat, really, no one was sort of, taken to it, and they were like, what is this? So in the end, they sort of changed the character slightly to make her have a bit more fighting spirit and sort of, almost like this omnibenevolent. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but yeah, sort of like this all-loving, really kind of caring individual who learns to, navigate the galaxy in her own way, really, as well as using the teachings of the Jedi. And that's basically who Ahsoka Tano is in a nutshell. There's so much more detail about it, but yeah, everyone loves Ahsoka.
That's probably why she's a very, very popular character then. Alright, so as well as those four, we also see well-known Sith characters that we've met in the films as well, like Dooku, Grievous, and Sidious. However, during my research, there was a mention of an assassin called, and if I butcher her name, I apologise. Her name is Asajj Ventress.
You actually got that bang on.
Who is she?
Right, so Asajj Ventress is pretty much, there are a lot of parallels between sort of like the four main characters of the light side and the four main characters of the dark side as well. So if you think of it as like Sidious is the dark side counterpart of Yoda,
yes.
Dooku is the dark side counterpart of Anakin, Grievous, not necessarily a Force user.
Yeah.
He's still like sort of the Separatists counterpart of Obi-Wan almost.
So if this is going the way it is, Asajj Ventress is the counterpart of Ahsoka?
Yeah, effectively.
Oh, okay.
Asajj Ventress, she's not a fully fledged Sith, so the backstory is a bit complicated. She was a long time ago. She was found quite young because she's from Dathomir, which is the same planet that Darth Maul is from. So she is a Night Sister, or comes from the Night Sister Coven, made by Mother Talzin. Headed up by Mother Talzin. She becomes quite important later in the series as well.
Okay.
But Asajj Ventress, she was sold very young, or
yes.
given up very young to a master who was killed by pirates during a raid on where they were living. And eventually, a Jedi called Kai Narek came to the end. This is only revealed in one very brief flashback in an episode of the Clone Wars where we really sort of Asajj Ventress. She goes through a bit of a character development as well. But basically, she was trained by Kai Narek after she used the Force to save him as a child.
Oh, okay.
There's a bit where this pirate's about to kill him, and basically she pushes out with the Force, and basically the pirate goes over a cliff or something, or over the building.
Yeah, okay.
And basically she's trained as a Jedi, so she actually is a former Jedi, but unfortunately Kai Narek's killed when they were defending this same town.
Okay.
And she gives in to the anger of the dark side, murders the pirates who killed him, and basically she then sort of taps into a dark side, and then she gets trained by Count Dooku, so she is basically the apprentice of Count Dooku.
Oh, okay.
She's not a fully fledged Sith, because there can only be, if you know the sort of Sith rules, the rule of two, there can only be two Sith, technically, a master and an apprentice. And usually what ends up happening is the apprentice ends up killing the master. and then training their own apprentice. It's what Sidious did in episode 1. So Maul was the apprentice. So basically, Maul was an assassin, very sort of She was sort of... So basically, Ventress was sort of like built up as the next Darth Maul, if that made sense. You know, sort of like the next assassin who's possibly going to become the apprentice once... The theory is once Dooku offs Darth Sidious.
Oh, okay.
Although that's never made expressly clear, because Dooku's very complicated as a Sith character. Again, another former Jedi who turned to the dark side. Actually was the master of Qui-Gon Jinn from the original film.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a bit of connection there between him and Obi-Wan and Anakin. So there's a long, it's a very long, impressive line of you know, of master and apprentices.
Yeah.
But Asajj Ventress, basically, yeah, she was built up to be the next Darth Maul. She's like a Sith assassin, not quite a fully fledged Sith, but you know, she can still wield lightsabers. She can do the Force abilities.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much Asajj Ventress. She is basically the counterpart, the dark side counterpart of Ahsoka Tano in the series. And again, with the parallels, you sort of see Asajj Ventress go through quite a bit of character development as well.
That makes a lot of sense. We touch on Darth Maul later on, and we will go on to that now. Though, so something a bit different. While doing my research, I went onto a website which was the top 10 best or important moments in the Clone Wars, and we're going to go through them. And I want you to share your thoughts, Josh. And I've written them 1 to 10, but I'm going to do them in the reverse order, 10 to 1, because 1 is the most important one. So number 10, obviously, some of these things I haven't heard of, some of the things I've heard of in context, right? So the first one is one I haven't heard of before, which is number 10, Bad Batch.
Ooh, this gets interesting. So the Bad Batch, basically, this is really important because in season 7, which is the series of the Clone Wars that came out like 5 years after the original, all series ended, and in season 7, the Bad Batch arc, it's named after a group of clones who are deformed, basically, but not in a bad way. They've all got sort of enhanced genetic mutations that give each of them different abilities. So they're in season 7, in episode 1 of season 7, we are introduced to the Bad Batch during the Republic's fight against the Separatists for on the planet called Anaxis. And basically, they need to... Captain Rex, this is Anakin's clone commander at the time. Basically, they need help infiltrating a Separatist base.
Okay.
Because I can't really explain... Well, I can, because it's not in the most important thing, but earlier in like season 3 of the Clone Wars, there's this really popular clone character called Echo. And Echo is sort of... Echo and Fives are sort of this duo who basically, again, really go through a lot of character development. We see them come up from just basic clone troopers, from training actually, all the way up to being ARC troopers, Advanced Reconnaissance Commandos.
Okay.
Basically, and they are like meant to be the top most elite class of clone trooper.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Echo is killed in season 3 of the Clone Wars during an arc where they have to rescue a Jedi Master called Evan Peel.
Okay.
And basically, the idea is the insinuation throughout season 7 for this Bad Batch arc is that Echo is actually alive and is being held captive by the Separatists. And basically, Rex, you know, having formed this emotional bond with Fives and Echo, this comes after another sort of, you know, important moment in the Clone Wars, which we will get onto later. I think those of you that have watched Clone Wars, you guys will probably know what I'm on about. But Rex obviously has a few emotions going through, you know, the possibility of really one of his best men being alive and one of his best friends, really.
Right.
One of his most loyal soldiers. So basically, him and Anakin try to go and infiltrate the Separatist base. However, they need some help to do it, and that's where the Bad Batch comes in. Now, the Bad Batch, like I said, they have because of their mutations, they have enhanced abilities, but each of them is different. So there's 4 of them, and that's sort of, you know, kind of the Bad Batch is their name. They take their name from, but they are like basically basically like like a bad batch of paracetamol or whatnot.
Yeah.
They're like a bad batch of clones, but they're useful, and in that case, they sort of the Republic keeps them around for really sort of high risk, high reward missions, and so basically there's 4 of them. There's Hunter, who is the leader of the Bad Batch. He has enhanced tracking abilities, so he can sort of if he sort of kneels down and sniffs the dirt, he can. He's a very experienced tracker and can pretty much find anything.
Yeah.
Or track down anyone.
Yeah.
There's Wrecker, who is massive and incredibly strong. He can lift like gunships.
Oh.
He is really, really strong. I mean, I'd struggle if I was a Sith. I'd struggle against him probably. Not the smartest, so it's quite easy to outthink him. But there's a series. Obviously, the Bad Batch does get their own series on Disney Plus as well. Which is sort of like the Clone Wars, which is sort of seen as season 8 of the Clone Wars, but
okay.
It's not officially. And the Bad Batch, basically, he becomes a really lovely character in it. But so everyone kind of likes Wrecker, so we'll forgive him for being, a bit boneheaded. But then there's Tech, who's like the smart one. He's sort of he sounds more British than the others. I don't quite know what that's meant to mean from George Lucas and Dave Filoni, but
what the British are good at tech.
Well, no, he's like the uber intelligent one. He's basically C-3PO but human.
Oh, okay.
If you can imagine it, it's sort of like that. That's very much Tech. And then there's Crosshair, who is an expert sniper. He's sort of like the Hawkeye, the Marvel, like Marvel's Hawkeye.
Yes.
He's sort of like the Hawkeye of the Bad Batch. Doesn't miss. However, he's very, he's quite callous and quite cold, Crosshair. And he's very relentless in his task.
Yeah.
And he's sort of seen as the loose cannon, if you know what I mean, of the Bad Batch. And so, yeah, the Bad Batch is very important because this, obviously, we do get introduced to the Bad Batch, and it's sort of how they're sort of, they earn the respect of Rex as sort of, Rex earns their respect as well.
Yeah.
Because normal clones to the Bad Batch are called Regs, so short for regulars.
Okay.
Regular clones, basically.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, they hate Regs, and the Regs typically hate the Bad Batch. But it's how they earn the respect of Rex throughout that entire angle, and Anakin as well, to be fair, a certain degree. Anakin's a bit less hasty to judge them so quickly from Rex's, but they do earn the respect in the end. And actually, Echo is alive, and he ends up going and joining the Bad Batch, and that sort of serves as a catalyst for the Bad Batch series. So that's pretty much why it's important. Again, like I said, the Clone Wars does branch off into a lot of other a lot of other arcs and a lot of other TV series, some films and some games as well.
Yeah. So number 9, obviously we have an hour, don't we? So number 9 is Yoda's mission.
Oh yeah, this is quite late on as well. So this comes around season 6, which is sort of seen as lost season. So Yoda's mission is very, very much open to interpretation, this one, but Yoda has a vision of the Sith returning. And there's a lot of, parallels in this one. So he sort of sees himself as a dark sider, so we do get to see very briefly Sith Yoda, which is pretty cool.
Ooh.
And it's sort of like, it's just, red eyes, it's Yoda, but he's just completely jet black. And got the red eyes, and there's sort of like black plumes of
quite cool
energy coming off it. It's one of the most frightening things I've ever seen in Star Wars. Because the fact that Yoda, if he could have gone to the dark side, that was...
I mean, he's already a very, very powerful
imagine
Jedi,
what you'd be like as a dark side. Oh my god, if he was a Sith, we'd all be in trouble.
Yeah.
But Yoda's mission, so he does have a vision of the Sith returning, and basically he decides to go to Malachor, which is the ancient home of the Sith. Back when, because basically it wasn't always like rule of two. The Sith have been going for thousands of years. Again, for some of you in the comments who've maybe played the Old Republic games, you guys will know what I'm on about. And basically the Sith, there was a whole empire of Sith. There was like 10,000 Sith once upon a time, but they all got destroyed. Or so, the Jedi thought, and that's what, of course, the Phantom Menace is about, the return of the Sith to the galaxy.
Yeah.
But Yoda has a mission, and he just experiences a lot of weird Force visions. And in a way, I suppose it lets Yoda become more connected to the Force in a way. And it's just a generally quite a weird arc that a lot of people don't really talk about. And I think, to be honest with you, I think if you tried to understand all of it, it would be a bit complicated. But the best thing I can try and explain it as is that Yoda he questions himself. And that is sort of what you mean. You were saying earlier about Yoda being one of the four main characters in the Clone Wars. I suppose in that respect, yes, because he does get quite a few angles with him. He does get quite a few arcs for his own, and this is probably the most important one because this is right towards the end of the series. This is a bit of foreshadowing coming up, as seeing Yoda sensing the presence of the Sith. He knows the Sith are going to return, but he doesn't do anything about it, and that comes into later series and films and games as well about the Jedi's failure and the Jedi's incompetence to see or action the return of the Sith properly and effectively, and being too focused on the war. So it's a really interesting angle. It's not one of my favourites, but very, very interesting.
Yeah. So is that why it's probably put down?
It's probably important because, again, bit of foreshadowing of the Jedi's failure to action the return of the Sith.
Yeah.
And Yoda's own flaws, really, and shows that even the wisest Jedi aren't, they're not immune to oversight.
Yeah. So 7 and 8 we will merge into one because they're both trilogies, apparently. The Night Sisters trilogy, obviously we touched on that with Asajj Ventress, and the Mortis trilogy.
Yeah, Mortis trilogy. The Mortis trilogy. They are very, very different in terms of respect. So we'll start off with the Night Sisters trilogy. So the Night Sisters trilogy is very much the Asajj Ventress arc. This sort of is a main character development point.
Yeah.
Because Asajj Ventress, she basically does do... basically, there's this point in the series where Sidious actually sort of catches on. Hang on a minute. Asajj Ventress, you're training her. What's going to happen to me? So basically, he orders Count Dooku to kill Asajj Ventress. Which is very, actually, it's quite touching, actually, but it shows that Sith do have emotions as well. Because Dooku is very hesitant to, sort of end Asajj Ventress's life. Because he has trained her, and he sort of thought, it does show that Sith can form attachments as well. And again, that's what we mean, with attachment leads to the dark side.
Yes.
And there's a lot of that with Count Dooku, especially in later series as well, but there is just, so much. Count Dooku, he's not one that gets a lot of development, but he is, he loves, we love to sort of see it when he does get, say a less, more obscure character gets a bit of development and a bit of backstory. But basically, Asajj Ventress, after being betrayed, because she is eventually betrayed by Dooku, she returns to her home of Dathomir with the Night Sister Coven, which is headed up, as I said again earlier, by Mother Talzin. Now, Mother Talzin, if this woman doesn't give you creeps, there's something wrong with you. Like, the Night Sisters, it's all like witches sort of stuff. Like Salem, just witches of Salem witch hunts.
Yeah.
So very much like that. It's
a bit creepy, a bit eerie.
Yeah, I'm not so sure there wouldn't have been a bit of inspiration taken from that. Because Dathomir is sort of meant to be like the horror element of Star Wars. There are far worse elements in the comics and Legends continuity, but in terms of canon, that is by far the most horrifying. That is like the most horrifying element of the Clone Wars. It's Dathomir. Dathomir is just the Night Sisters and the Night Brothers as well. So Maul is a Night Brother, where and they're sort of more, they're very big, strong, bulky, sort of like a warrior race, if you know what I mean. Yeah. They're trained and bred in combat, kind of. Yeah. Whereas the Night Sisters, they're very much more secluded, but they are expert manipulators and expert assassins. And so Asajj Ventress returns home to, the convent where she was sold as a child.
Yeah.
And basically, Asajj Ventress, this is where she gets a lot of character development, because she sort of questions what it was all for, really, why she was a Sith for so long. And in the end, that sort of leads as pretty much a catalyst for her becoming a bounty hunter in the end. She actually goes on the run from the Separatists and the Republic, because obviously no one really wants to be associated with her, and everyone wants her dead. So she does become a bounty hunter, and that's sort of why she sort of becomes, I don't want to say, like, a good guy entirely, even though there is an indication in comics set later in the timeline that she does actually turn into a good guy. And actually does meet quite a hero's end. But we sort of see her, moving on. So it's just really nice to see, again, another quite obscure character who, up until that point, we didn't really know much about, their past life before we saw them in the series. Get a bit of a backstory, and it's again quite a catalyst. And that sort of does lead on to one of the later series. Or later arcs, which we're going to talk about, one of the more important ones.
Yeah, then the other trilogy, the Mortis trilogy.
Now, the Mortis trilogy is more to do with Anakin, and it's very much focuses on Anakin being the chosen one. And so, bringing balance to the Force. Because basically, Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka are basically sort of magically transported to this world called Mortis. And Mortis is sort of like this planet which we're not entirely sure whether it exists in reality or whether it's a Force manifestation. But basically, the Mortis is inhabited by three beings, and it's basically, Mortis is meant to be like almost like the home of the Force. If that makes sense. So this is going to get into very sort of spiritual stuff and very symbolic kind of characters. We do meet three characters on this world of Mortis. The first one you're introduced to is the sister, or the daughter.
Okay.
Sorry, not the sister. Yeah, it is the daughter. And the daughter is basically meant to be the living embodiment of the light side. So she's very much the light side embodied in a physical form, in a physical manifestation.
Yeah.
And she's obviously very nice and tries to help Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka sort of. They don't want to get off the world.
Yeah.
They don't want Anakin, Ahsoka, and Obi-Wan to leave the world, even though, despite the trio's best attempts to do so. But she basically tries and makes them comfortable where they are, if they can be comfortable.
Yes.
And then there's this, and then the next character you meet is the Son.
Who's the dark side?
The Son is the living embodiment of the dark side.
Yeah.
And he is very much, he seeks to escape Mortis. That's his angle. He seeks to escape Mortis and spread the dark side throughout the galaxy.
Oh, yes, okay.
And but he can't do that, because the son, because of the sister or the daughter, also being trapped there, and he's constantly locked in a battle with her.
Yes.
And the third character, because of the third character, the father,
is the balance between
both of them. He is very much the balanced force, the embodiment of the Force.
Yes.
Both sides of the Force. He keeps them in check and traps his children on Mortis. Because he knows if either one of them were to get out into the galaxy, the results would be absolutely catastrophic, and the balance within the Force would become a bit
unhinged.
Thanos wouldn't like it, basically.
Unbalanced, not as life should be.
It would be perfectly unbalanced,
as all things shouldn't be.
Exactly. But so basically there's another character within Legends there is a mother, also known as Abeloth, but I'm telling you, remember when I was talking about horror elements earlier?
Yeah.
That is some next level. Night Sisters have nothing. The Night Sisters have nothing on Abeloth.
Yeah, she's like up here in terms of horror.
Needless to say, she's possibly the most powerful character in Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Like, it takes Luke Skywalker in the Legends comics. It takes Luke Skywalker and his entire Jedi army to defeat her.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's too powerful for canon, which is why we sort of keep Abeloth stuck to Legends. We keep her trapped in Legends continuity. Because if she got out into canon, that would be just way too over. There are certain characters within Legends that are just too overpowered.
Yeah, that are not put in.
They're not put in because they would be too broken, almost.
Yeah.
It's like a video game. It's like if you added a fighting character in that's just going to maul everyone.
Yeah. It's like Smash Brothers mods.
Basically, yeah. Smash Brothers mods, but everyone, they can't.
Everyone uses them, yeah.
Everyone uses them.
Yeah.
So yeah, but basically the Mortis gods, and it's very much, they test Anakin. That's why they've trapped Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are just there out of habit, basically, out of, they're just there to watch Anakin, and out of coincidence they happen to be traveling with Anakin because the father wants to test Anakin and see whether Anakin is the
chosen one.
Yeah, and whether he can bring balance to the Force, and by doing, and there are a lot of parallels. Like he manages to control the daughter and the son, and in the end, it's quite an emotional arc because it's a lot of foreshadowing. The son mainly does a lot of the foreshadowing through the dark side, and there is an allusion to what Anakin will become.
Yeah.
With Darth, because there is a lot of, you basically see a vision almost of Revenge of the Sith, of the events of Anakin, of Anakin's doing.
Yeah.
And it's very much, again, and proving that Anakin is the chosen one, and just showcasing how powerful Anakin really is, but how easily conflicted he is between the light and the dark side. And that's why we sort of see why he turned.
Wavers, yeah.
We sort of see, or get a little glimpse of why he could turn to the dark side and what his reasons were for it. So that's a very interesting arc.
Yeah, number 6 is linked to number 1, which is obviously the most important one. Obviously, we might do this uneven now because they are both sort of similar. So number 6 is Crisis on Mandalore, but number 1, which is the most important one, is the Siege of Mandalore. But as we're talking about Mandalore, we might as well merge both of them.
We might as well merge both of them. So the Crisis on Mandalore is very much a heavy topic in the Clone Wars periods from about season 3, 2-3 onwards.
Yeah.
Mandalore does come up a lot.
Yes.
And it's almost like a culture. I think that's why people are so fascinated with Mandalorians. It's like its own culture.
Oh, okay.
Which is pretty good. But so the Crisis on Mandalore basically is, again, that political terrorism element I was on about earlier.
Yeah.
It's very much showcases the turmoil of this world called Mandalore.
Yes.
Which is used to be inhabited by great warriors, like I said earlier, like the the Night Brothers of Dathomir. The Mandalorians are almost like a warrior culture. Anyone can be a Mandalorian, but they have to accept like a code and whatnot.
Yeah, there's like rules.
It's like certain rules. Like it depends, and even within Mandalore, there are warring factions.
Yeah.
And Mandalore, the Crisis on Mandalore, after being a warrior race so long, we find it under the rule of Duchess Satine Kryze, who is a pacifist and is trying to lead Mandalore into a new era of prosperity and yada yada yada.
Yeah. Oh.
But she's been targeted by basically these Mandalorian terrorists, basically, who called Death Watch.
Okay.
And they are, again, more akin to the old ways of Mandalore, very much warriors, if you know what I mean. Believe Mandalore should be a global galactic power capable of taking down the Jedi and the Sith. And basically we sort of see it's that warring political faction. It's very much meant to represent, a sort of almost like a sort of a rebellion against the government. Yeah. And it's very much about that. That's sort of what we meant earlier by with George Lucas and Dave Filoni taking it from real life and putting real life elements into the Clone Wars. So that's very much about the Crisis of Mandalore.
The Siege.
The Crisis of, yeah. So basically, that eventually, I would say the Siege of Mandalore is the culmination of the Mandalore storyline within the Clone Wars. Again, Mandalore, such a heavy topic in the Clone Wars. Well, in the Star Wars period, actually. I mean, like you said, it got its own series.
Yeah, they've made a whole series.
Yeah,
out
it got heavily featured in Rebels.
Yeah.
But the Siege of Mandalore is basically the final arc of the Clone Wars period. So it's the final. It's sort of like the ending of the Clone Wars, and it's very important because we sort of see Ahsoka, again, one of the earlier arcs that's on this list. Actually,
I mean, we can talk about it.
We'll get to that. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that later. But Ahsoka has basically stepped away from the Jedi Order. So again, a lot of parallels between her and Asajj Ventress, both of them leaving their order behind and doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But Ahsoka is basically, we got to see what she'd been up to after leaving the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
And basically they hire her back because at this point Darth Maul has taken over Mandalore.
Okay.
After at this point Satine Kryze has been killed, as Death Watch has been merged, and Death Watch itself has actually split into two groups.
Okay.
So basically there are some Death Watch people that have stayed loyal to Maul.
Yeah.
And then other Death Watch, the other half of Death Watch basically became rebels. And became started fighting against Maul to liberate Mandalore.
Yeah.
And basically the Republic had to intervene eventually. But they couldn't do it because of diplomatic reasons. So Ahsoka, even though they found a way around it, the Republic, because the Jedi Order sent Ahsoka, who obviously wasn't a Jedi at this point, but could still fight and wield a lightsaber or two.
Yeah.
And they basically sent her and a lot of clones, including Captain Rex actually, to Mandalore to basically help the Death Watch rebels take down Maul. And it's very important because they actually eventually do. We get to see Maul versus Ahsoka, which is an absolutely incredible duel.
Like, I'll have to look out and watch that.
The lightsaber choreography in the Clone Wars is just absolutely amazing. But basically, we sort of, again, it ties very much into the events of Revenge of the Sith. It sort of sets up Revenge of the Sith quite nicely. In fact, it goes on at the same time of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, okay.
So, effectively, what it is that we sort of see Order 66 enacted on Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And basically, she does survive it, fortunately, and it's about, Rex also sort of snaps out of Order 66. She manages to save Rex from executing the Order.
Yes.
Or seeing it through. He does execute it, but she does save him in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite, it's about it's very emotional because it sort of shows the relationship between Rex and Ahsoka as well, how that's come along, and how Rex is very hesitant to, kill his own brothers, or how Ahsoka's more hesitant than Rex is to kill the clones, because Ahsoka recognises it's not their fault, but Rex sees killing his own brothers as the only way, and it's quite emotional. It's quite heavy emotional stuff.
Yeah, so that's why it's top of the list.
It's probably, and it's the final scene of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Sort of, Ahsoka leaves one of her lightsabers.
Yeah.
And she leaves her lightsabers in a graveyard of clones with like helmets stuck on sticks and whatnot, as a grave to mark each clone. And the final scene of the Clone Wars shows the planet that the ship crashes on years later. And it's Darth Vader, and he literally picks up the lightsaber and just ignites it, and that's how the Clone Wars ends.
Ooh.
So it ends with Vader finding out that Ahsoka is alive.
Oh, okay. That is quite cool. Obviously, we are running out of time in a second. However, the other four that were on the list, which we will only touch on, is 2 is Clone Protocol 66, 3 the Rogue Jedi, Shadow Collective, and then Darth Maul returning.
Okay, so Darth Maul returning, that was again, Asajj Ventress being built up as the next Maul wasn't really working.
Yeah.
So they decided to bring back Darth Maul, and it's actually revealed that Darth Maul is alive.
Even though you saw him fall down.
Even though he got cut in half.
Yeah.
And he's living a sort of like, it's really weird when you first see him. He's sort of living as this spider thing. You know, he's got like these mechanical spider legs on him.
Yeah.
And he's gone absolutely insane with revenge.
Yeah.
And he's actually found by a character we're introduced to in the Clone Wars called Savage Opress, who is actually Darth Maul's brother.
Ah.
Again, brother, you know, brother being a relative term to him, they're all from the the Night brother.
Yeah.
A village, but yeah. So Savage Opress actually is sent by Mother Talzin to find Darth Maul, and it's that massive reveal because she says to him, "You have a brother," and it's in this orb, and you slowly, this face slowly turns around in this orb, in this sort of red orb, and you're sort of thinking, because remember this, at the time everyone thought Darth Maul was dead.
Yeah.
And everyone was at that point was thinking, what? No, hang on a minute. And it was sort of like as the face turns around, it's like, no, you're not alive. No, not you.
Not denial. No, it can't be a thing.
Yeah, so basically it's just that shock moment. It's one of the best moments. It's one of the best reveals in all of Star Wars.
Yeah.
But again, it serves as the catalyst. It's probably one of the more important arcs because it serves as the catalyst for so many extra things, like the Siege of Mandalore.
Alright, fair enough.
And it's again it's how Obi-Wan deals with it as well, and it gives him a nice little. It gives him something to do, which is lovely because we all love Obi-Wan. Yeah. If you don't love Obi-Wan, like I'd say second favourite character in the Clone Wars.
Yeah. If we are going to do something different here, I will put that website in the description, and then they can check out the other points.
Yeah, we'll check.
So, because obviously we only are short for time, remember. So the most hated. So the next one is the most hated character, and this is another research thing. I don't know why he's the most hated character, but he's a guy called Pong Krell.
Pong Krell.
Why is he the most hated character?
Absolute bastard.
Language. Yeah, it's fine.
No, you know what? With him, no. With him, I refuse.
What?
I call him whatever the hell I want. All right.
Yeah.
Can burn in hell for all I care.
So why? So in a short explanation, why is he the most hated character?
He kills clones.
Okay.
Clones are a very touchy subject. Basically, some emotional character die. You know, some really long emotional character dies. Oh dear, sad. What a shame. Moving on. Some random clone who's only just got a name that episode dies. Everyone balls their eyes out. Clones are very much, you know, the favourite part of... Everyone loves clone troopers.
Yeah.
And typically, obviously, anyone that kills clone troopers is the most hated character. Yeah. It's the same with Commander Fox, despite him being a clone as well. He kills fives.
Yeah, so anyone who kills a clone is immediately just like...
Effectively, yes. It's like... Yeah. But Pong Krell, the way he does it is the problem with him. He is just so manipulative and so calculating. It is revealed that he is a bad guy in the end because he is actually a Jedi, but he's turned to the dark side secretly and is basically just killing all these clones. And basically his tactics in the past, there's a mention of him having the highest casualty rate of clone troopers under his command. Ooh.
Yeah.
We're not sure what that number is, but considering a lot of lives were lost during millions of clone troopers died during the Clone Wars, you can assume it's quite high.
Yeah. So with the fact that he's turned to the dark side secretly, he's almost like an inside man for the dark side at this point.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to become basically it was his proving point. He wanted to manipulate. He basically wanted to manipulate. Yeah. The clones and sabotage the Republic's invasion of this planet called Umbara. Mm-hmm. And basically, he does it with Anakin's unit as well, which touches home a bit. He takes command of Anakin Skywalker's clone unit. No. And it's just, He does get his comeuppance in the end, but he plans to basically prove himself to Count Dooku, to basically become one of Count Dooku's agents, and again, an assassin, sort of very similar to Asajj Ventress. Yeah. But basically, it's just the way he does it. It's the way, he forces clones to kill each other.
Yeah, he's hated for...
He is hated for just killing clones and being bloody good at it.
Yeah. And then the final thing to round off this part is... this might be quite difficult, but What is and explain again in a short thing. What is your favourite season / episode of the Clone Wars?
Oh my god, my favourite of all time. This is a hard one. Again, the aforementioned Umbara arc. Am I allowed an arc?
You can have an arc if you explain it.
Alright, okay, I'll have to say season then, because season 4, because season's 4 really when most of these arcs really try and kick off now.
Yeah.
You know, the good part comes, but it's mainly for the Umbara arc. I just love seeing the clone troopers in action. Like, I've always been, ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with, like, different clone legions. So, like, but I love the 501st, favourite clone legion.
Yeah.
I love Anakin Skywalker's clone legion. It's just, you know, I love Captain Rex, I love Echo, I love Tup, I love Jesse. Everyone from the 501st. Like, if you give me a 501st helmet, I'll be wearing it in public. But again,
good for a night out then, yeah.
And I just love sort of seeing the big battle sequences. I think there's, you know, you gotta love, you know, these massive sequences where everything just goes completely chaotic.
As well as lightsaber duels, as well as you said, the choreography of lightsaber duels.
Yeah, there aren't many lightsaber duels. It's mainly again Ponkrell. Heartbreakingly, the majority of lightsaber action is Ponkrell mercilessly cutting through clones, but towards the end when they find out he's actually gone to the dark side.
Yeah. So you'd say season 4
Season 4 hands off, because it's when Mandalore really kicks off as well.
Alright, and that is rounding off part 1 of the podcast. We will be back with part 2 very shortly.